So in the first couple of episodes of our Get More from Azure series, we're looking at ways of using Citrix Cloud Networking to give us greater user experience and reduce the cost. By consolidating multiple individual components of the delivery infrastructure into a single platform, it's given us all the traffic management for availability, for reliability, for security and performance functionality to basically squeeze all that into one box, which is mega efficient so that we get super user experience and we reduce the operating cost in terms of the Azure footprint. Great. Now, what about this magical box that we've now created and installed into the environment? I mentioned probably in part one, might have brushed against it in part two in the security sessions, that we mentioned about the way that the platform effectively is working at layer 7. Now, this might not mean anything to you, don't worry if it doesn't, but effectively all the traffic that comes in and out of the box, we crack it open, we investigate it, we perform those functions of traffic management, optimization, security, and then we put it all back together again and send it on its way. Now, when we do that, it's a perfect opportunity to pull that traffic apart and actually look and see what's going on and potentially just tinker about with the traffic a little bit, to add some little mechanisms in there so that we can start to recognize some pretty cool stuff, basically. Maybe ask yourself this hypothetical question. How do you measure user experience today for your services? How do you do that? Is it just uptime? And if it's up, it's good. And if it's down, it's not? Is that good enough? Hopefully, maybe, don't know. Are there other tools in there, or do you rely on little funky network metrics and say that's 2 milliseconds have just come in there? That's a bad thing, right? Does 2 milliseconds matter in your user experience? Does it matter in the productivity of that user, in the success of your website? Does it matter? 2 milliseconds? Yes, no, don't know. Imagine this, where we could put ourselves in a position where taking that information away from my app delivery controller, which is already doing all that other funky stuff, taking that information and delivering it into a centralized management console so I could get real-time and historical visibility of what user experience looks like in my world. Now, there's a really key point in the back of that, is in your world. Because what you're delivering, everything that you do in your own IT environment is, back to one of our famous quotes, a snowflake IT environment. And so the things that you do, from the infrastructure that you have to the user base that you have, it is probably completely unique. And that's a reason why there's a whole industry that exists around the back there to help you overcome your individual challenges, right? But imagine this, if we can take that information from our app delivery controllers, and these could be just obviously in my Azure footprint, but potentially we could spread this out across the hybrid multi-cloud world, which we'll talk about in another one of these sessions shortly. But this idea now is taking those service delivery metrics, putting them into that platform using machine learning and some forms of artificial intelligence to recognize what good service looks like for your service, maybe at a local level, maybe at a global level across these multiple clouds. When you know what good looks like, you can start to recognize what bad looks like. And bad might not be catastrophically bad, it just might be not great. So maybe we could start to get the right level of information in front of the right people, give different people in the teams delegated administrator access so the security guys can keep a check on when security functionality is getting in the way of user experience, or the core line of business guys want to get a feel for how well is the website performing under that load that we just suddenly found ourselves due to an advert running in a newspaper press that we didn't even know was going, or whatever that challenge may be. How did it perform? Well, there's the real-time metrics. At a user experience level, looking right the way from the back end of your virtual data center that now lives in your Azure platform, right the way to the endpoint, and understanding all of the little bits of the challenges along the way, and then just presenting that information in a really easy to understand way. So you can measure what user experience looks like from a user experience perspective. And the things that you can measure, you can manage, which is exactly where the platform goes into next. Now, we take that capability of user experience measurement and add to that same sort of principles about the actual infrastructure side of things. So the kind of stuff that the network guys want to look at in a day-to-day basis, how the health of a particular device is and what kind of load is under there. And maybe we'll want to perform some configuration changes and potentially want to do that across multiple locations, but without jumping in and out of individual management consoles. Well, again, this particular capability here, we call it the Application Delivery Manager, allows us to aggregate the management and the visibility of services across our application delivery controllers, the formerly NetScaler devices, wherever they may live in Azure or otherwise. And then being able to say, user experience looks like this, and I want to make some changes here, and to do that from that same platform is a very consolidated, efficient way of working. We can put an audit trail on that. We can automate those processes to push some of those config changes out of hours for moves, adds, changes purposes of business continuity, whatever those things may be. But also, if we're trying to do stuff that's already been done before, like, I don't know, upgrading a HA pair of appliances up in the cloud there, up in Azure, could we try and look at ways that we can kind of simplify that process? We're not reinventing the wheel. This is a well-trodden path for any of your sysadmins, but it takes time to do. So let's automate that and find ways of being able even to do that while this service is alive. So actually in-service software upgrades on the fly and those kind of things automated from here. Maybe we want to do some configuration movement from our old school legacy, a physical data center, and take some of that config up into my new Azure platform. Well, this is a great orchestration tool to be able to do that and potentially amend and edit on the fly. So this powerful tool, this app delivery management console, really becomes the very epicenter of your world. And when you start to stretch away just from these individual component parts of app delivery controllers and security functionalities, and we'll talk about SD-WAN in the next session, when you start to take away those individual component parts and look at the aggregation of their capabilities, this becomes really powerful. Now, the other thing that we're able to do with this super cool new platform of centralized management and centralized control is to be able to take community learning and community feedback, to take elements that have already been delivered in the field in the past, and to really simplify the process of delivering certain services. So, you know, a typical service, you want to deliver a particular service from Azure and it has a set of characteristics. We can have a style book for that. I'll give you, I guess, an old school example. In the old days, when this first came out, you would say, I want to deliver Exchange from my physical data center. Well, okay, we know there's a bunch of URL contents. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to do, right? But it's the same every time. So let's just template that. And if we can template that and ask our administrators, firstly, just fill in the differences, fill in the bits that change, but all the kind of back-end logic, we take care of that. So what's the good thing about that? Well, firstly, it's super quick. Because all that logic already exists, I'm not rebuilding the arc from scratch. It's already there. I'm just changing the bits that need changing. Secondly, it kind of reduces risk because that's a well-tried and tested template. So clearly, if I want to use that template and rinse and repeat, it will be a good template. It has to work first time before you're going to use it a second time. So the fact it's there and available is a good sign. So if that's correct and right and proper, then there's less chance of it being a human error that stops that service working when it's first plumbed in. So in other words, we're kind of taking the risk of error out of this situation as well. But then again, if I want to start moving around and start to play around and start to look at things like web application firewalls, things that would be historically quite complicated and quite involved to take from scratch and deliver those in anger in production environments, there's some templates, some style books for that as well. So having the ability to recognize all of this information is great. Being able to recognize what user experience is great. Being able to control and manage the environments is also a super efficient way of working here from this single console. But I mentioned the web application firewalls and some of those security features in the style books piece there from a configuration place. And so yes, the obvious question is, can we take those kind of metrics? Can you give me some metrics about the threats and the security of my environment in real time? Can you tell me where I'm being hit from? Can you tell me what type of attacks we're seeing on our estate? And can you tell me the success level of keeping those out? All of that's in that same place as well. Now, I'm going to leave you to ponder that, because with all of that information in that one place, you can start to carve up administrator privileges, so certain folks can only see certain bits of that. But when you start to do that and start to think about how that might work in your own environment, your own infrastructure, it's quite a powerful offering. It's quite a different way of working. It's a way of working smart, not hard. But maybe now you can start to see how these individual components as a collective can help you reduce the cost of operating in Azure. And because it's all squished into one place, whether that's operator latency and getting a new service or change into production, or it's very simply the clock cycles delivering that service out to your users, whatever that core metric is in terms of a latency sense, we're going to knock a load of that out as well. It's powerful stuff. But SD-WAN's next, and you'll start to see how this plumbs into the message. But as usual, you want more information, you've got any questions, shout us up on the website and we'll be glad to help out.